Have you ever heard of death by cheese? It's a real thing. August 2023, there was a cheesemonger. That's still a real thing. And he was working in his warehouse, which really is sort of the pinnacle of success, to have your own cheese warehouse, I think. Has this warehouse of cheese, and he's moving things around. You have to spin the cheese. Obviously, we all spin cheese. And he's in there spinning the cheese around, moving it, and knocks over a wheel of cheese, these big 90-pound wheels of cheese, and it sort of domino effect down the shelf and ends up coming back on him, and he was crushed by his cheese, which you shouldn't laugh about. It's not death by cheese. It's a real thing. How about death by slug? 2019, there was a 19-year-old boy with his friends in Australia, and they were just messing around, and one of his friends said, "Hey, you should, joke around, you eat that slug." So he did. And he contracts a parasite which causes him to be diagnosed with rat lungworm disease. A few days later, his legs are hurting, and then the parasite latches to his brain and spinal column. He ends up, those end up inflamed. He goes into a 420-day coma. He emerges paralyzed, and 8 years later succumbs to the parasite at the age of 28. How about death by loneliness? It's a growing problem across all the world, actually. Countries are recognizing as a whole that people are dying from being lonely. Now, horrifically and tragically, some of those are self-inflicted deaths, but what we're also recognizing through longitudinal studies is that people are dying earlier and quicker due to loneliness. The U.S. Surgeon General's Advisory, which was published in 2023, says this: recent estimates, based on synthesizing data across 148 studies, with an average of 7.5 years of follow-up, suggest that social connection increased the odds of survival 50%. That is staggering. They go on to summarize that the physical effect of consistent loneliness has a net effect on someone's life as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. The physical, not just emotional, but the physical effect on their body, go to cortisol levels, all sorts of things, has the net effect of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Loneliness. It's not just the physical side effects, right? Some of us know all too well the stress and the doubts and the fears that crop up when we feel like we are alone. And in a world post-COVID, phone-addicted, deadline-driven, schedule-stuffed, politically aggressive, graceless, often world, it's not just tempting to sometimes feel alone, it actually feels overwhelmingly impossible to not feel alone at times. We use social tools to try to make connections. But it really becomes down to more than connections, because it's possible to be very well connected and yet feel very, very alone. That's a reality that people are wrestling through, that they've been taught the wrong way to form friendships. And so in all the work they're doing, scurrying about and whatnot, they are trying to make these connections that in turn actually can sometimes make them feel even more alone. If you're consistently trying to form friendships using bad advice, you will form bad friendships. There's a cultural trend over the past few generations that's getting worse about rejecting relationships that understand who you are, that understand what you need to be called to continue to grow for, rejecting those types of relationships, and instead trying to develop relationships using isolation or tolerance. Isolation or tolerance, it looks like this, that the social tools to try to make those connections, we really present ourselves in a way that isn't quite true about us. We present a sort of whitewashed, picture-perfect vision of ourselves. That we don't open up as we should, and because of that, it ends up being that our performance, or possibly the product, you could say our pretending, may gain us more and more connections, but those connections are fans, maybe followers, but certainly not friends. See, because Fans and followers want to keep you up there. They don't want you close. They want to be entertained by you. They don't want to know you. And so the increase in these relationships actually make you more lonely. It's a net negative. Another way that as a society we've kind of become a normal way of designing and building relationships is through tolerance. This is where we find people who will put up with our sin, who will put up with our bad habits, who will accept me as I am. And what happens over time, maybe slowly, but maybe all at once, you realize that my own evil hurts me pretty badly. And what kind of friend are you to watch me hurt myself? Many of us experience that as a young adult, right? You come into adulthood, you have a little bit of freedom, you have a little more resource than you used to, so you kind of stretch out, try some things. Maybe you party a little bit. Maybe you get to experience some relationships or some avenues you hadn't before. And as you do that, okay, maybe you're with some people and you call each other friends. But then life catches up and you get old. And your joints hurt and hangovers don't leave quite as quick and responsibilities are heavier and bills are more numerous and things and you're like, And so for some of us, we just kind of age out of that, right? Some of us mature out of it because we're called up to greater responsibility. But something interesting will happen. The people that you walked with through those things, oftentimes there'll be a couple who stay there, right? A little longer than they should have. And as you watch that take place, it actually creates a sense of resentment between the two of you. They, I think, really struggle to form words about why, but there's a distance now. You look back and those friends that you called friends maybe aren't so friendly because they look at you and they kind of resent the growth that you've taken in your life. Why? Because the relationship you had was not built on a foundational experience of love or a hope for one another's best interests. It actually was built on a level of tolerance. You don't judge me and I won't judge you. And together we're going to be able to do this and we can still have some fun. As you leave that, it exposes a truth. This wasn't a friendship. It was just sort of a way to have company. Neither the isolation that produces fans and followers, nor the tolerance that produces company will ever actually produce good friends. It's an impossible way to produce friendship. And so you may say you love those people, and those people may say that they love you, but the proof is in the pudding that love doesn't isolate. Love doesn't tolerate things that hurt you. And so the question is, if we have been built and taught and designed and have tried out these broken ways of developing good friendships, how exactly are we supposed to do this? How do you go and develop good friendships? Because the loneliness aspect is killing us. To understand that, we're going to specifically be looking at John 15 as Jesus talks about what it means to be his friend. And for this whole series, for the next few weeks, we'll be looking at what is it a good friendship? How does it apply to our lives? What does it look like to walk out being a good friend? Because if you've struggled with this, then the chances are that you go, the problem is me. When you look at everybody else's performance, which is in fact veiled isolation, or you looked at everybody else's tolerance, which is in fact just a slower version of a downward spiral, it appears that everybody else is figuring this out, and yet I haven't, and so I guess I'm the problem. I just don't think if all of us are looking around going, I'm the problem, that we're all individually the problem. I don't think that makes sense. I think there's a bigger understanding. I think that God has more for us. So John 15, verses 14 and 15 says this: "You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, for everything that I learned from my Father, I've made known to you." When you think of Jesus, your first thought may not be friend, but it should be up there. In fact, this is one of the primary ways that he's designating to define his relationship to his followers. You guys are my friends. It sounds cheap almost, sounds trite. right? Like we might teach this in cubbies, right? Like the 4-year-old Sunday school classroom is like, oh, Jesus is my friend. But imagine for a second if you were to really grasp this, that the God of the universe would come into the world, that he would reach out to you and he would say, let's do this together. How that would transform your view of yourself and what it means to be you. How that would transform your view of God and the way that he would actually care to work in your life. How it makes you look at people different and the person you could be to them and how they should be to you. Like this could change everything if you truly understood Jesus' claim here. The theological reality beyond this is the friendship with God is made possible because of Jesus. Because of what he's done. That's sort of the premise that we need to grab on. Here's the truth that you need to grab, you need to sink down into your heart, that friendship with God is possible because of what Jesus did. There's an allowance for a deep, close relationship to God because of the cost that Jesus paid. We're allowed to be friends. And it's a beautiful truth to say that Jesus came to make us friends with God. That's a good thing. Jesus' heart is made known to us. He made God's heart known to us. And if you think about it, isn't that what a friend does? How do you become friends with someone? A good friend, it's somebody that you come close to, that you can share your heart with, that you can open up, this is who I am. And when that's reciprocated, that's where a friendship takes place. That's who you are. That's who I am. We can do this together. We can know each other more. The Father, through the Son, has shared his heart with us, and that's the true mark of friendship. To know someone's heart. Another way you could say that is if you want to grow in intimacy, you need to grow in proximity. Intimacy, the connection, the available connection that one can have with another, is had in proximity. The closer you are, the more relationship you can have. That's good friendship advice. It's good marriage advice. It's good human advice. Some of us struggle. We say, well, I want more intimacy here, but I'm stumbling. It's like I'm hitting a wall. I just can't get closer. The proximity is stopping the intimacy. God came to us. God bridged the gap. He increased the proximity that his Son would come into our world, and that from there, this ultimate friendship would be produced. That he would share his heart with us. That he would give his life for us. And that we would know Jesus as the ultimate friend. One verse earlier, Jesus says, greater love has no man than this. There's no way to show love in a better picture than to lay down one's life for one's friends. Jesus is saying this, understanding fully that he's on his way to be crucified. Between these commands of loving one another, that's how people are going to know who you are. You stay with me, you abide with me. Why? Because you're my friends. Because you know my heart. Because in that, I'm going to change you. I'm going to transform you. I'm going to grow you. This is the perfect sign of love, to give one's life. This is the truth, that friendship with God is available. So here's a question. If that's true, why are we all so lonely? Right? That's the truth, that God has made a relationship available to us through the work of Jesus. That's available, but yet we're all stuck smoking 15 cigarettes a day of loneliness and hopelessness and desperation. Why? Here's why. Because the truth doesn't set you free. You may have heard that the truth will set you free, but the truth here is that Jesus came to be our friend, and yet people live in loneliness. The truth is that God has made a way, and yet people still live in hopelessness. The truth doesn't set you free. Do you know why Juneteenth is celebrated in African American populations? You know why it means so much? Because on January 1st, 1863, Abraham Lincoln signed into law the Emancipation Proclamation. That in the rebellious states, now slaves are free. January 1st, 1863. But guess what? That message was not passed along by many plantation owners. That law was not followed by all the politicians. And so there were many slaves who had been emancipated, yet were living in slavery. So on June 19th, 1865, 900 days later, the federal troops arrived in Galveston, Texas, to force the new law into reality. So that day is celebrated. That day, in this context, means a lot to a lot of people, because that was the day when it wasn't just truth out there, it was truth applied. When Jesus talks in John 8, he says, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." It isn't just truth in some abstract concept that sets us free. It's truth that we know. It's truth that's mine. It's truth that affects me. It's truth that works in my heart, that changes me. And if truth isn't yours, if it doesn't change your life, then it isn't going to free you. We have this reality that God's saying friendship with Jesus can be yours. Friendship with the God of the universe. Friendship that teaches you your design and frees you and gives you new life. It can be yours. But you have to know this. We sit in these rooms and we listen to podcasts and we listen to songs and they have these great truths in them, but if they just bounce off our heads and we go, that sounds like it would be really nice, then it doesn't belong to you. And you can go back to living in an old life. The truth that you know will set you free. Here's an interesting thing about friendship with God. It says here that our friendship is revealed in obedience. That's interesting, right? Jesus says this, "You are my friends if you do what I command," which immediately doesn't sound like friendship to me, you know? But think about for a second what a friend does. A friend works to align you with what is best by both example and explanation. This is what's best. This is what's good for you. Let's journey together towards what's best in life. And I love you and we're going to have time doing it, but here's the deal. We're heading somewhere good together. That's what a friend is. A friend says, look, you need to listen to me. I know you. I know your situation. I know what you're doing, and this is wrong. Or this is obviously right. Or this is what you need to do. Or I'm here for you. That's what a friend does. And so when they offer their advice or their direction, and you say, I trust your heart, and I trust your wisdom, I trust that you know me, I'm going to listen to you, friend. So imagine here how Jesus' perfect wisdom and his perfect heart and the fact that you trust him with your soul comes down to a place where when Jesus says something, it carries the force of command. He speaks to us with the command of a king, and yet we can hear it with the voice of a friend. It's not just we have to listen. It's that it's in our best interest that our friend who knows all things is telling us this, and we say, thank you. That's exactly what I needed. He loves us. Our relationship with Jesus is conditional. There's an if in there. You notice that? If you do this. Meaning if we walk in this obedience, if that's what this definition of our life, this loving obedience to Jesus, if this is what defines us, we are his friends. And if we don't, then we're not. Right? And I'm not talking about a moment of I stumbled and I fell. Hopefully, moments ago when we prayed prayer of confession, you reached out to God with those failures. You said, God, I fell and I'm sorry. God, I loved other things more than you. God, I gave in again. God, I made a mistake. God, I didn't make a mistake. I did it on purpose, but please forgive me. Right? And you confess, and in that you receive forgiveness, and your relationship is growing and it's continuing. I'm not talking about a moment. I'm talking about a lifestyle. I'm talking about people who say, I just don't listen. Because functionally, think about what that means. If you have a friend and you choose to do what's opposite of good, right? I'm going to hurt my friend. That is not a friendly thing to do. If you knew this is the choice that is good for you and it's good for me and we are friends and we love each other, I'm going to choose this. That's what a friend does. And if you have a relationship with Jesus where he's saying this is what's right and this is what's good, and you know that and he knows that, and you say, I'm not going to do that, that's not a friend. And I would be really concerned if you think of yourself as a friend, if you live in a lifestyle of anti-friendliness to God. It's not what a friend does. That's not who a friend is. If we reject what is good for us and good for our friend, we can be a lot of things. We could be a leech. We could be a victim. We could be an abuser. We could even be an enemy, but we are certainly not a friend to that person. Here's the conclusion. Theologically, we work through this and we understand that Jesus feels a certain way about his people. Like he treasures us. That's what it means to be in Christ. When he talks about being a friend, the literal word there, philos, it means beloved. The ones I love. Like that is a primary way that Jesus sees these people he's dying for. Hey, I love you. Can we just breathe that in for a moment? Just in a moment of pushing the world out, a silent, just understanding I am loved by God. Man, that is life-changing. Every time you interact with it in an honest way, you are treasured. Jesus said this, the greatest thing you can do of love is to die for your friends, knowing he's on the footpath to the cross, to his own crucifixion. And he calls them friends, he calls them beloved. I'm here with you. Just need you to know I love you. That's who we are in Christ. That's what it means to walk with him. Or else, here, he wouldn't have died for you. He wouldn't have saved us. It wouldn't have made sense. But friendship with God is accessible through Jesus. So how does this friendship work? How does it work to be friends with God? Or even, maybe for some of us, how does it work to be friends with anybody? And maybe you're the cool guy and you have 1,000 friends. That's fine. All right? Write this down. Share it with the next sorry sap you meet. But a lot of us need help. And so here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at 4 relationship convictions. These are 4 things that have to be true in order to maintain a healthy relationship. You need them all. Convictions that you hold. The first one is that I am worth knowing. The second is that you are worth knowing. The third is that I accept the risk of trusting and I accept the work of growing. These are 4 convictions that we need to hold on to in order for a relationship to be healthy. And we're going to work through them briefly. First, I am worth knowing. In order for you to be a friend, you need to believe that you are worth knowing. This is how relationships are designed. This is how they work. If I don't believe that I'm worth knowing, then what will happen is I'm either going to block intimacy from taking place because I'm not worthy of it, I'm not worthy of affection, or in some way to prove my worth, I will go to inappropriate lengths to get it. Some of us have had trouble holding friends because we get a little too intense. And we reach to places we shouldn't to get affirmation and validation and affection. The reality here is that a good friend is actually a secondary love. It's love that's from within you already overflowing. But here's the thing, if you don't have a love for yourself, like to truly know that you are worth knowing in the way that God's built and designed you, if you don't believe that, then you don't have love to overflow. You'll just take. I am worth knowing. When I understand that, I'll come to the conclusion that I'm designed intentionally. That if I'm worth knowing, that God has designed me to be a certain way. Not that I am flawless. I have flaws, but I am not a flaw. God is working in me. God has designed me. I have value in this world. And here's the thing, other people knowing me is actually a good thing for them. Do you believe that? That other people knowing you is a good thing. It's good for them. Something a lot of us wrestle with. If God made you on purpose then saying I am worth knowing is a way to say that the Creator made me on purpose. I trust the Creator. And in that, you'll find your design to point back to Him in all sorts of beautiful ways. Secondly, you are worth knowing. If I don't believe that someone else is worth knowing, I will just be there for what I can get out of it. And so the fun and the experiences and the pleasures and the rewards and the opportunities, all those may be a valuable part of a good friendship, absolutely. But those are not the primary use of a friendship. That's not the point of the friendship, is that you would get this from it. C.S. Lewis puts it this way, that friendship is not a reward for our discrimination and good taste in finding one another out. In other words, what he's saying is friendship is not designed that I'm going to weasel my way in, I'm going to get what I can, I'm going to squeeze this, because then that's going to get me farther. It'll leverage this, it'll open up that. These things will be great so that I can get more for me. He says that's not what the designation of friendship. That's not its design. That's not how it makes sense. It's the instrument, he goes on to say, by which God reveals to each the beauty of all the others. That what if this friendship was not so much about what you get from them, but actually about how beautiful God's created people to be. And in that, it points to how beautiful He is and how wise He is. And here's the thing. If your design is to meet other people and to discover the beauty of the whole universe through these other people, I'm betting that all of your friends shouldn't look exactly the same. Right? That would be a difficult thing, to discover a big diffused sense of beauty. To understand various aspects of how God's doing different things if all your people are in the same stage of life. If they all care about the same things in the same way. If they all have the same priorities, if they enjoy doing the same things in the same way at the same time, right? And some of that's necessary, right? Because you're on the same team, and so you're going to have to sit next to them for 1,000 hours this season, and that's fine. Make friends. Invite them to church. Tell them about Jesus. But what if this wasn't about making me more comfortable, but actually friendships are designed to stretch me to see a bigger universe? That's what C.S. Lewis believed. Turns out God brings people along to help save your heart. That some of the people that you think need you the most might be the other way around. That the fact that they're so needy really says a lot about your ability to give compassion out. The fact that they're trying has a lot to say about your level of patience. When I believe others are worth knowing, it creates a humble joy. It's actually the context for so much of the New Testament. All the one another's, right? Love one another, care for one another, encourage one another, be patient for one another, remind one another, stir one another up to good works. Chase after them when they fall off. Bring them back. All these one another's. The context for that is friendship, but you can never actually get there if, one, you don't believe that they're worth the work, and two, you don't take the time to get to know them. How are you going to one another each other when it's like, how you doing? Fine. It's good. Some weather out there, huh, that we're having? Weather every day. When I wake up, there's weather. You got to know. You got to know people, or else you have no context to do this. Third, I accept the risk of trusting. I accept the risk of trusting. Friendship is risky because it's based on trust. And in that trust, what you're doing is you're allowing leverage to hurt you. You're allowing someone the opportunity to hurt you. And I think this is where most people stall out. The first two is like, okay, I can see how you're in my life. I can see how I'm in your life. I can see how God could do something here. That's fine. And then when the pressure comes to actually risk, to actually open your heart, to walk out on the ledge, to show somebody how broken you might be, the struggling you might have, where you need to grow, we stop. And what happens then in those relationships is it's like there's no oxygen. It's like there's no gas in the tank. It just doesn't go. And people don't really know me because I haven't really opened my heart to them. It just stays. And some of us might have a lot of relationships in this exact way. You see them, and they're happy to see you, and that's it. There's not much more than that. Because there can't be. Because there isn't the trust, there isn't the currency to keep going, to go further. Now, you can't be best friends with everybody in the world, okay? I know that. But do you have some? Do you have some who know your heart? Who can reach in and can say, right there, that needs to change. Right there, that feels like it's bleeding. Right there. Do people have that perspective? Can you do this with the people you're... Now, we don't trust because we don't want to get hurt. And I get that. I get that. Proverbs puts it this way. One who has unreliable friends soon comes to ruin. But there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. Now, that first part, the unreliable friends, we've experienced that and we got really hurt. But if you're so afraid of the first part of the verse, you will never experience the joy of the second part of the verse. You'll never find people. You won't give them the chance. When we do accept the risk of trusting, we can lean on them and we find a sweet closeness that you wouldn't be able to find anywhere else. You find a treasuring that in the places where you'd say, nobody could ever love me because of this, and they say, I see that. It's not great, but let's move forward. Let's work together. Let's grow. You get to see the world from another person's eyes, and from their joys, and from their strengths, and from their lessons, and from their pain. And it broadens everything for you. The world becomes colorful. I don't need friends. I'm just going to go to work. Okay. Aristotle, the philosopher, he once said, friendship has no survival value. I think a lot of us stopped right there. I just don't need it. It's fine. It's not adding anything to my life, but he continues, rather it is one of those things which give survival value. That to live a life alone, without the true friendship that adds the color and brightens the horizon, and it gives challenges, and it gives encouragement to your heart, and it pulls you from the depths, and it keeps you from being too prideful. If you don't have those things, you may survive, but there'll be a big question about why. What did you do with it? All that survival that you had, all that extra money you earned, all that extra time you spent. Great. I hope it keeps you company. See, you were designed to have a friend. And you were designed to be a friend. And both of those take skill. Fourth, I accept the work of growing. I accept the work of growing. If I don't accept the work, then what's going to happen is I'm going to let them down when they lean on me. Right? They're going to lean on me. That's why a lot of us have been let down, is we relied on a friend and they pulled out. We were leaning on them and they pulled away. And we fell. And so we got scarred and we put our walls up and we said, not again. If you have friends that hurt you, it's because they said, this is too much work. This is too inconvenient. This is too time-consuming. This is too serious. I don't want to do this. And so you needed them, and it hurt when they did not accept the work of being a friend to you. And some of us took that as the reality of all people, all times. And we've suffered ever since. But there's another type of work. When that good friend does reach out to you and does say, hey, there's a problem here, they're putting work back on you now. When you have a friend, a good friend, they will say things like, stop it. There is nothing as humbling as a good friend. Right? I was at a conference this week with Ryan and Austin Glenn. Y'all know Austin from Utah. It's a church plant we support out there. And we were at this conference together, and boy, just like sometimes you're like, man, friendship is hard. You know? And nothing as humbling as like sitting across from your buddies and being like, oh, I did this way. And they're like, yeah, that sermon really sucked. That was a bad one. And you're like, That's a friend humbles you. You know why? Because you need it. Stop. Come on. Deal with this. Don't ignore that. That's an issue. Do the work. Get over it. These are things that good friends say to one another. And every time one of those gets said to you, you're getting work, right? This is something that needs to happen. This is something you need to work with. And you're going, I don't want to do that. It'd be better and easier if I just didn't. And what will happen is if you reject that work of being a good friend, that relationship will grow cold. Because they reached out and they cared about you. See, everybody's a big fan of tough love until they're on the receiving end of it, right? And I've had that. Where they come in and they sit in the office and they're like, oh, this is the problem. And it's like, well, here's the solution. And they're like, well, that's not helpful. It's like, depends on who you ask, I guess. But that relationship will stall there. I'm unwilling to do the work. Proverbs puts it this way: faithful are the wounds of a friend, and profuse are the kisses of an enemy. Meaning, it's better for you that I tell you what hurts than I tell you what you want to hear. That's a good friend, in a nutshell. They're going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And it's work, and it's uncomfortable, but if you push it away, that relationship won't grow anymore. In the next few weeks, we're going to look at how these apply to all these human relationships and how God's hand in that is part of our sanctification and what he's doing in his bigger picture and all this glorious application of the gospel to our lives. But today, I want us to, before you apply it to all these other relationships, I want you to apply it to this one. That just sit for a moment and consider how God applied these convictions. How the gospel is present in them, that God knew he was worth knowing. That's why he reached out to us, that he understood the value of knowing him. Or that God saw value in creating us. God saw value in revealing himself to us, that it would be good to know you. That he wants to. God accepted the cost and the risk of patience and forgiveness. You know how risky it is to forgive somebody? And God accepted the work that it would cost to send his son to redeem us. So that's from God's side to you, these convictions at play in the gospel. But pause for a moment and think about those convictions as you apply them back to God. Your relationship to him. Because really, as we walk away from this, we should understand I need to become a friend of conviction. In my relationships, in the relationships I have, I should be driven by these convictions. Because that will keep me going when the storms come. It'll keep me going when we're in the valleys. It'll press me forward into growth, that I become a friend with conviction. So think about these in your relationship to God. Do you believe that I am worth God knowing? Do you believe that God, when he looks at you, he sees a valuable child worth pursuing, worth sincerely knowing? God is worth me knowing. Some of us have this anger that's been tucked away for a long time, bitterness, fear, that when we think of God and we view God, it is just as that sort of slave relationship. Okay, yeah, he did this nice thing for me, so now I'm in the kingdom, but whatever. But we don't think about him as saying, you're my friend. That Jesus would welcome us in. Do you believe God is good and powerful and just and merciful? Do you believe that Jesus is alive and worth pursuing today? I will take the risk of trusting him. You may be standing on the edge of some big decisions, and you know what's right, but it's scary. The question is, can you trust your friend? Maybe that's not you, and you're more in the stages of small decisions and the everyday, and you might be realizing that if you want to continue to mature, that you actually have to face some of the scars and some of the demons that you've avoided for a really long time. And to do that, you need to take the risks to trust him. You need to take the risk to trust him. The last one, I will endure the work of growing. And what you could say there is that you will endure the work of obeying. To walk with Jesus in loving obedience, it's really discipleship at its core. What would it be like to walk in step with your friend Jesus daily? What needs to be moved? What needs to be recalibrated? Because it will be work, and it will be uncomfortable, and it will be good, and it will bring life. See, God has designed you and me for friendship. And primarily, it's friendship with Him. And so your next step is to become a friend that holds to the convictions of staying true to your friend. To walk in this, not just passive, not just hope for the best, not as other people do it for me. No, that you are purposeful. And as we continue to see in this series, you'll notice that all these things are designed to point to Him anyway. And in that you find this great fulfillment, this great design that as Jesus' friend, I'm suddenly aware of so much that He's doing in my life and that He's going to use me to do in the world.